Hi everybody, it's Matt here, your local friendly neighbourhood vestibular migraine sufferer. So today's video is a super important one, and it's one that I knew I would have to make at some point in my life really. But it's a video I am hoping will bring hope to sufferers who've got the vestibular disorder at the moment and are struggling, and also to people who have had vestibular disorder or vestibular migraine and have got better like myself. There's hope in this video for you, and it will make sense in a minute. If you're new to my videos, and please do check out my other ones. I've got a host of videos to try and help people who are suffering from the condition. But if you want to just watch this video, I have had two major vestibular episodes in my life. The first one was in 2012, and although it was never diagnosed, it lasted for about a month. I had an attack, didn't know what the hell was happening. Then within a couple of days, I started to feel really poorly and got some really strange symptoms, which we'll cover probably in a minute. And then I had, after getting better, I was fine for 7 years. And then in 2019, I then had my second major vestibular attack. And this was at a football match, and I suddenly had all sorts of horrible symptoms. And then I was ultimately diagnosed with vestibular migraine. So I actually had a diagnosis this time. And since 2019, I have not had any major attacks. I've been treating the condition and managing the condition through a combination of meds, some super migraine style glasses called FL41 lenses, through changing my diet and just changed a little bit in my lifestyle and that kind of thing. And that has helped to me not having a major attack since 2019. So I said this video was an important one, and why is that? Well, to set my stall out straight away, what I thought would happen to me one day has happened, and I have had another major vestibular attack. So my third major vestibular attack, and I'll get into that in detail in a minute. But there's serious cause for optimism, hope, and I'm sure it will be of interest to you as well, because I haven't got chronically poorly as a result, and that was one of the major kind of, hypotheses that needed testing and then answering. So this video is ultimately going to answer, I think, a couple of major questions that I've certainly had for many years, and I'm sure some of you guys have got. So firstly, the first question it's going to answer is if you are, have you recovered from vestibular migraine or vestibular disorder, will you have another episode if you're being treated? Secondly, if you do have another episode, will you get chronically ill, or will you sort of brush it off and get well straight away? And then I think it's going to also get into answering some questions and some firming up some hypotheses myself and other sufferers have had about what triggers are. So it's a really good video, and I'm kind of now at a test case that I think strengthens our hypothesis and improves that evidence base. So as I said, flash back, I should say 2 weeks ago today, not 2 weeks ago today, 2 weeks ago last weekend, I had my third major vestibular attack. So as I said, between now and 2019, I'd had just odd pangs of symptoms occasionally, flash of derealization or whatever it may be, but I never had a major attack. So this attack happened over 2 weeks ago, and I was at a football match. So this is where I will get into this subject a bit more detail in a minute, but when I had my attack in 2019, I was also at a football match. So I experienced the same symptoms I'd had in 2019 and 2012 when the attack came on me. My breathing got quite difficult very quickly, just out the blue. I noticed that I was struggling to swallow. I was getting like this sort of almost like jolt in my body, which is hard to describe. I realized that my vision was going a bit off. I felt like I couldn't speak properly, and that was something I'd experienced both times before. And then kind of my balance went off, and I felt like just really weird even though I sat down, and then if I stood up, I felt really weird. So there it was, bang, the attack came on me, first time in 3 years on that scale, in the same environment where it happened to me in 2019, which we'll come on to. But this time things are a bit different, and we'll get into that now. So as I recognised the symptoms, I knew straight away what it was. So that took away any kind of horrible anxiety or panic about what's happening to me. I didn't go, oh, am I having a stroke? Am I having a heart attack? And then get wheeled into A&E or into the football medical bay as what happened before. Straight away, I thought, it's a vestibular attack. No need to worry, it's a vestibular attack. It's not a stroke, it's not a heart attack. So that horrible kind of extra worry that was there both times before just wasn't there. Now, that's not to say it wasn't horrible and horribly uncomfortable and a little bit panicky. When you can't breathe, as anyone will testify if they had breathing issues with vestibular disorder or with any other condition like asthma, when you can't breathe, it's a horrible feeling, or when you can't breathe properly. Therefore, there was a bit of a panic to it, but I knew I wasn't going to die. So what I did, I removed myself from that situation. I said to my brother who I was with at the football, I'm having a major vestibular attack. I need to go. I need to get myself out of this environment. And I took myself out of the environment. I did actually walk home because I found the motion of walking made me feel a little bit easier, which, makes sense if you think about the balance system. And then I sat down on my sofa, and I'd say within 15 minutes or so, I felt normal again. The attack happened, but it didn't deteriorate into a situation where I needed emergency medical treatment or I was taken to the football ground medical bay. So, to sum up where we're at, I am a sufferer who's got better, but I am still vulnerable to attack. And I think we'll come on to this, but if there's certain conditions that align for it to happen. I knew from past experience that both 2012 and 2019 that once you've had the initial attack, the crucial period is in the next few days after that. Because on both occasions before, I kind of have the attack, feel a bit weirded out for a day, then I'd feel like things had got back to normal. Then literally within another day or two, I'd start to develop the symptoms we all know and hate: derealization, photophobia, increasing anxiety, balance problems. So I knew I'd have to give it a few days before I could tell whether this attack had led me to go into a new period of illness or a new chronic phase. Was I nervous? Very slightly, but I was confident the mitigation, so the medication, the changes to my lifestyle that I've already mentioned in the video, would mean I wouldn't drop into being really ill and drop into a new chronic phase. I've always said in some of my other videos that we know an attack will come in the future, so the waves will come at us. But now, if we're being treated and we've got the right mitigations, we've got the surfboard to ride those waves when they come, so we won't fall in the water and drown. So I was confident and hopeful of that, and I remain positive about that. Obviously, I had to give it then a few days in a row just to see what happened, and thankfully, nothing happened. I had no new symptoms. I didn't drop into a chronic phase. I didn't feel poorly. I was able to just resume normal life, with a caveat, which I'll come on to in a minute. So we are now over 2 weeks since that happened, and in both previous episodes, the symptoms would have developed by now. So I feel like I'm past the point of danger, hence why I'm now making this video, and I've not spoken about it up until now. So, as I said at the start, we had several questions, didn't we? So one, can you have an attack even if you're being treated and you've been in recovery for 4 years? The answer is yes, but that's not a horrible thing as it sounds, because what we can also answer is question two, that if you've been treated and you've kept the attacks at bay for years, months, whatever it may be, it shows that when you do have one, because that will probably come, it's inevitable probably for all of us, you can fight it off and fend it off. The treatment works in terms of stopping you from getting ill. Yes, you have the attack, but within half an hour you feel fine, and there's no horrible illness that comes after it. So earthquake, think of an earthquake and a tsunami. The earthquake is the attack. Both occasions before, a tsunami came a couple of days later to flatten me. This time, because of the medication, the treatment, the mitigations, the earthquake happened, but there was no tsunami. The waters all remained calm and I was fine. Really, for me, were really reassuring situation, and hence why I want to share this story with you. It's added reassurance to me. So I always thought that if I had another attack, my mitigations would mean I wouldn't get poorly, but it's now been proven to me. So the hypothesis that if you are being treated and you have an attack and that you won't get poorly because of the treatment after the attack has been proven for me, and I'm passing that on to you. I know some of you probably will be skeptical of that, and you may be people out there where that's not happened, which I'm really, really sympathetic to you if that's the case. But if you like me and unsure and you're not sure either way, hopefully this will bring you hope that if it does happen to you, then there's a seriously good chance, highly likely, that you won't get majorly poorly again, like has been the case with me. So that, I think, is something that I was already confident about that happening and me being okay, but now I know it, and that kind of puts to bed any kind of lingering doubts about whether I would be okay after attack or whether I would get really poorly again. I know the answer. I didn't get really poorly again. So then coming on to then what was going off here, why did I have an attack even after being in remission for 4 years, after managing the condition fine, after just feeling the odd pangs of symptoms but never having a full-on attack? Again, I think this strengthens some of the hypothesis I've had and put out in my videos, and that some of you guys have had as well. As I said that in those other videos, and for those who haven't seen them, I think when you have a vestibular attack, it's a combination of different things that have come together to push you over a threshold that means then you're vulnerable to an attack. And I've said that I think one of the sort of sources of that is inflammation in your body. I noticed that in the week leading up to where this happened at the football match, I'd had a flare-up of my IBS. I then had a later night on the Friday, the night before the football, had a few beers in Manchester and Salford. It was a great trip, by the way. But and then I'd also that week been working super hard, some long hours at work, and then I felt as well like I might have a little bit of a cold. So as I've set out in some of my other videos, these are different things that can cause inflammation in your body, or your body to become, not functioning quite as it should be, a little bit more vulnerable. All those things happened to me in that week. And then when I went to the football match, this then was, I would say, it was the final straw to push me into an attack. So what is it then about football matches? So is this just some weird coincidence that my third major attack was at a football match and my second major attack was at a football match? And the answer for me is no, it's not a coincidence, because there is something therefore happening at a football match that makes me as a vestibular migraine sufferer vulnerable in some way. And I've thought about this, and it kind of dawned on me almost half an hour after the attack that what you've got at football matches is constant movement, so the constant following the ball and the players, but then also quite bright lights, so the floodlights, if it's going dusk outside, which the game was, it was going dusk, floodlights had come on, the ball was going around everywhere, the players were running around, so lots of motion. Then added to that, you've got the motion of kind of like the crowd and people getting up and down and busybodying around, so to speak. So when we know, and I've argued in other videos, and I think most of us know it, that triggers for regular migraine are light, sometimes noise, sometimes motion. But then we also suspect, don't we, that triggers for vestibular migraine are light, motion, sometimes noise. So at a football match, you've got those things in abundance. Why has this not happened to me at a football match since 2019? Because I've obviously been going constantly since then. Well, I do tend to do mitigations when I'm at the football match. So I usually will have my sunglasses on for the whole game, just to kind of ward off any of the light, or basically to reduce the pressure on my senses. So sensory overload is, as we know, a problem for vestibular migraine sufferers. So I would wear my sunglasses at football matches to tone down that visual overload. Stupid me forgot to take his sunglasses to the match the other week. So yeah, simple mistake. I'd just not put them in my coat pocket. And to be honest, I didn't really give it much thought, because it's been a long time since this happened. It's been 4 years ago. So I'd never really thought, I've got my sunglasses, and then just carried on. So I strongly now suspect what happened was in the week that led up to that football match, I'd had inflammation in my body, the IBS, I'd had that late night, and it had pushed me closest to the threshold. And then what took me over the threshold into an attack was the light and motion, which I wasn't sort of mitigating because I'd forgotten my sunglasses. It probably would have been the case if that week had been a quiet week and there was no inflammation in my body, probably forgetting my sunglasses wouldn't have bothered me and I'd have been fine. But I think it was the combination of those things, plus then forgetting the sunglasses, being an environment full of light and motion, pushed me into an attack. So this for me is a little bit like a revelation or an epiphany, because it tells me that why football or being at a live football match is a vulnerability for me. It's something that had always puzzled me. I never quite worked it out, but now I've kind of got the evidence that it is a vulnerability for me, and I've got a good hypothesis now as to why football matches are vulnerable for me. And it also makes me feel vindicated. And I don't mean this in a nasty way, because people are only trying to help, but when I had my attack in 2019, and it was at the football match, my loved ones, friends, family, sort of, you would say to me, I think it's anxiety. And we as vestibular migraine sufferers have all had this level, that people blame it on anxiety and say, you're just anxious, and then that's why you've got these slightly strange symptoms. Now, we know anxiety can amplify symptoms, a bit like throwing petrol onto the fire, but I have always maintained that it's something physical going on, and then that gives you the physical issue you've got causes anxiety. So I remember I'd had the attack in 2019 at football, and then I was due to go back to the match the next week, another match, and I did. And I remember then experiencing very similar symptoms, like the tight breathing and the pressure on my chest and the balance thing. And my friends and family were saying, oh, that's just anxiety, because you had the issue last week. It's anxiety that's making you think it's happening again. And I remember at the time thinking, this just can't be anxiety, because I wasn't anxious. And I'm certainly not anxious about going to the football. Okay, you might be anxious sometimes about the crap football on display, or we need to win this match to stop up. But in terms of going into that situation is not an anxiety-inducing experience for me. It's not like getting on a plane, which I know it is, and I need to take drugs and drink before I get on a plane. But I've been going to the football for 30 years. So I remember at the time thinking, well, I'm not anxious. This is like, it's almost like breathing for me. It's an everyday thing going to the football for me. I've done it that long. And I remember not being a bit sort of annoyed with people saying that to me, but I never really had any proof to say, look, it's definitely physical, you're all wrong. The fact that this has now happened at the football 4 years later, when I'm again in a positive frame of mind, I've got no anxiety issues. Yes, I had a tough year last year, but I'm not sat here gibbering wreck. I'm not anxious about going to the football at all. It's kind of proven to me now that it's not anxiety at all, and it wasn't sort of the next time I went to the match back in 2019, it wasn't anxiety making me feel like I was going to have another vestibular episode. It was actually having another vestibular episode because I was in an environment which causes it, which is clearly a trigger for me. So I felt vindicated, really. And this might sound crass, particularly if you're really suffering with a vestibular disorder, but in a way it added kind of a pleasing aspect to the attack that I had the other week. Not that it's a good thing, of course it's not, and I know it does sound crass if you're really struggling, but in a way it was a good thing this did happen to me, because it's proven things that I've been talking about here. So it's proven to me that if you are being treated and you have another attack, then you can recover straight away and you don't get chronically poorly. And it's also proven that a football match where there's a lot of light and motion is a trigger, and that's nothing to do with sort of residual anxiety about having had a funny turn at a football match that then plays on my mind every time I go, because I knew it wasn't doing. I'd be honest if it was, and it never has done. So that was a real super silver lining about the attack that happened in the last, two and a half weeks ago. So where am I at now? So as I said, the attack happened, I walked home and practically by the time I got back to my front door, I was feeling okay again. Had a lie down, took it easy that night. So I could resume normal life basically from that point. There was nothing stopping me from doing that. I didn't feel ill. I felt a little bit tired the next day and I had a good rest, and I remember having a bit of a kip in the afternoon. Just need to apologise for that chainsaw noise you can hear, by the way. There's some blokes working on trimming some trees. It's not Leatherface from the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, so don't worry, he's not going to come in and cut me up, although some of you may well hope he does chop me up, but I jest. So apologies if you can hear that noise, it's nothing to worry about. So as I said, next day took it easy, and then for the next 2 weeks since then, which we're past now, where I was just being cautious because it's within the next few days when those horrible symptoms can develop, like the photophobia, derealization, and they didn't happen, fortunately. So yes, I've got back to real life, but with the caveat that I have been a bit cautious. So it wasn't like the next day I just then launched into a big binge drinking session, or I didn't the next day, run a marathon, or I didn't, put my head into a microwave, do something reckless. I've taken it easy. So yes, normal life was perfectly resumable the next day, if not that evening, but just to be on the sensible and safe side, to protect myself, I've taken it a little bit easier in the last few weeks. So that has meant that last weekend just gone, so we're Monday today, so the weekend we've just had, that actually fell on my birthday, and to be sensible and super cautious, I didn't do much for my birthday. I didn't actually end up going to a birthday meal that my twin brother had arranged. So if any of my friends who know me are watching this, just to be clear to you guys, and it's super, I know you've all been great with me, but it's super hard for me to explain to you or show you how horrible a vestibular attack and then the subsequent chronic illness is. I wish almost in a way that I could just gently touch your arm or whatever, and then for a few seconds you'd feel it. Because if you'd felt it and felt like what we have as vestibular sufferers, you would have played it cautious too. So if anyone out there is a bit pissed off that I didn't do anything with my birthday, or not pissed off, but was a bit like, he's overreacting, isn't he? And, isn't that being a bit of a chicken or whatever? Being sensible after an attack, if it means you don't then develop a chronic illness, is absolutely the choice I would make every single time, and you would make it if you were in my position. And I would do it every single time again. If I would miss, seeing Metallica or something 2 days later after an attack, if it meant then I wouldn't get chronically ill by overdoing it or causing me to have another attack, playing it safe is exactly the right thing that you vestibular sufferers will do, and indeed people with other silent illnesses. And it's so hard to show people and articulate. It's not like we've got a broken leg to show you and say, I can't do it because look how swollen this leg is. It unfortunately doesn't work like that. So if you are a mate of mine and you're watching this, thanks for your support, but that's why I wasn't around, and will do that every time I have an attack in the future. If I do, which I'm sure I will again, which I'll recover from, but I will play it safe in the immediate days after that. So I've spoken a lot there. It's been quite a long video, but I think just to summarise then where we're at here, and this is a real message of hope for people, is firstly, when you've been treated and got better, those treatments do mean you are less vulnerable to having an attack. So I've gone 4 years without having an attack. So that's really, really good lengthy period of time where I've not had any attack at all, and the mitigations are clearly helping with that. The second kind of lesson or takeaway from this is even recovered people like me can suffer from an attack at some point in the future. And as I said, I think it will have been a combination of things that have pushed me into the threshold of having an attack. Point 3, and this is the crucial point that trumps point 2, is if you have an attack and you've been treated and it's been quiet for a number of years, if you have an attack, then it doesn't mean you will fall into being chronically ill again. I have proven that. I've done that journey now, and I've not got chronically ill again. So please take hope from that. As a sufferer who's recovered, or a sufferer who's suffering at the moment, the future is bright. And once you cracked it and got treated and got better, even when kind of like the stalker or the killer comes for you again, it's lost its sting. Kind of the predator has lost its teeth. It won't make you chronically ill again. Or highly unlikely to, I should just say, because unfortunately science and unfortunately illness and unfortunately our people react and behave in different ways. But certainly for me, at least now you're listening to someone who's proof of that, who has gone through it. So if I can go through it and not get poorly, then other people won't either. And then fourth take home is that we now know that certain situations that I go into do make me more vulnerable to attack. It's not anxiety and fear of having a funny turn. It is actually something physical that means I will have an attack, and that might be the case for you. In my case, it's going to the football. So that's a great lesson for me to have learned. And then finally, you can, although I could resume normal life within half an hour of the attack, once I'd taken it off and felt okay, it's still wise to be a little bit cautious in maybe a couple of weeks, 3 weeks, whatever it may be, after the attack, just so you don't bring on a chronic phase or bring on another attack. Because even if you had then another attack and still didn't get poorly, it's still not a pleasant experience. Nobody wants to have to leave a concert or a football or work or feel like they can't breathe. It's not very nice, is it? We don't want to. So we want to avoid that. So by doing that, just be a bit cautious if you've just had an attack, and just give it a couple of days, I'd say a couple of weeks, playing it safe, just to be sure. Because as I've said earlier, the days after an attack were always the critical ones where I'd start to develop the symptoms that then became chronic. So they are the 5 kind of take homes from what's happened to me in the last few weeks, and also that I think people can take from this video. And it's, in my view, as I've said, I think it's something of real hope for sufferers and people who've got better as well. And I hope you get something out of it. I do understand that it won't be the case for everybody. Everybody's different. It might be you're thinking, I'm talking shit or whatever, and that's absolutely fine if you do. But I'm just passing on and sharing my experience. And I just want anybody, even if you don't like me, to at least, hopefully this video does give you that little bit of hope that you could be the same as me, as in once you've got better, even 4 or 5 years later, an attack can come on you, but your treatment, your mitigation, whatever it is you're doing that's made you better, will fend off an attack and stop you from becoming chronically ill. And that's, if I wanted to just give one message for this year, last year, and the year to come, it would be that. If I wait only one video in that time, it would be this one. And it's the most important video I would say I've made in a long time. But that's just me. So I do have other videos planned. There was going to be one fairly soon, because I know it's been quite a while since I last did one. But this has trumped it. This was a super priority one to do, so I've jumped to this one. And there's probably not too much more for me to say, and I've gone on long enough now. It's nearly half an hour, and it's one for the enthusiasts, I suppose, the real sufferers, or the real followers of my channel. But I think it needed time to be able to explain it and to get the message across, which is a real message of hope. Please do like my videos if you do like them, because it's super helpful. If you don't like them, okay, but don't press the dislike. If you don't like them, just turn it off. You don't have to watch it. Just watch some other shit instead. And then if you do like my channel and get something out of the videos, please do subscribe to my channel, because that's also super helpful. And I will let you go. And as I do, if you're new to my videos, I'll always end with a message, which this whole video proves. As you were, you'll be again. So thank you for listening. Take care, everybody, and I'll see you in the next video.